am going to mute all the people in the chat or in your rooms, just because I know it bothers people, the background noise. So welcome. This session is Indigenous Resources, Local and National. This is going to be a heavy session on resources. I have lots of stuff to show you guys. So not a huge presentation on any particular subject, but I just want to share a swath of materials in different areas that you may not be aware of. So welcome. My name is Tammy, and this is brought to you by the Alberta Regional Professional Development Consortia, ARPDC. I belong to ERLC, another acronym, so the Edmonton Regional Learning Consortium, but I live in Calgary. It's all very confusing. This is brought to you by Learn Alberta. Sorry, I've had a very long week. I'm getting a little silly. All right, so I'd like to do land acknowledgement first before we get going. So Tanse, I live on Treaty 7 land, which is the ancestral home of the Blackfoot people here in Calgary. There's also Dene people here at Sutina, the Métis Nation Districts 5 and 6, which I belong to District 5, and all have contributed to the shaping of Alberta and Canada. I thank the Blackfoot people for allowing me to share this land that I live on. And if you would like, you can put in the chat where you are living and which treaty land, or if you're by a settlement or wherever it may be, you can let me know that too. I don't have the bar across the top, which is the weird things. I don't see everything the way I used to. Apologize, and I'm gonna have to do a little searching in Zoom because of this. All right, so for those of you, again, who attend all my sessions, I'm gonna go through this again, so you can grab a cup of tea or something while I explain to everybody else who I am. As I said, I'm Tammy Johnson. For ARPDC, we're now called Designers of Professional Learning, which is a very apt title. Besides the regular online sessions that we do now for Teacher PD, which is kind of a result of COVID. So there have been some good sides to COVID, a lot more information available online, as well as these sessions for teachers. We also do face-to-face. I do travel around the province and do different sessions and workshops, as well as work on curriculum areas. Treaty 6, welcome. Particularly, right now the focus is really the new curriculum, of course, because that's really the area that we're looking at. And I will be giving my input wherever needed for the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit resources in that area. I am Red River Métis, so my family is from Selkirk, Manitoba. I went to school in Winnipeg. If you don't know where Selkirk is, it's north of Winnipeg. Just at the beginning of the Interlake is what it's called in Manitoba. Lake Winnipeg and Lake Manitoba are there. If you know any Indigenous peoples, or if you are Indigenous yourself, you know that we ask two questions usually. What's your name and where are you from? Because who are your people and where's your land? And so I've already told you where my land is, by the Red River. My family surnames are Mowat. My mom is that's her maiden name. McDonald, Mackay, and Beaudry. Mackay is pretty prolific family across the prairies, and Mackay, the Beaudrys are a Métis voyageur family from Alberta. My family did live in Alberta for a time. They settled back into Manitoba, but that's a picture of my great-grandpa there that you can see, the gentleman sitting on the bench by the rocks as a young man. I think that's the late 1800s that picture was taken. And in Fort Saskatchewan, there's a school named after him, James Mowat Elementary. Beside there's a park called Mowat Park, named after my family. And there's also a street in Edmonton named after him, James Mowat with 2 T's, James Mowat Trail. As I always say, the English at the Hudson Bay Company changed the spelling. It was M-O-A-D. They're Orcadian family from Scotland, and probably couldn't understand their accent to begin with, because they speak an ancient Norwegian dialect actually there. Because people, sorry, I'm gonna go back actually. I hit the button by accident. I'm having one of those days. Okay, it's here from Drift Pile Slave Lake. Oh, nice. Hello. I know. I actually the Lana Lalonde at Miscanawa is our cultural. I can't remember what she's called. What she does, but she attends our Cree class on Tuesday nights there. She's from Drift Pile too, so you may know her. The picture beside them to the right is my grandpa's the middle boy there, Rosser, and his brothers Stanley and Oliver, and then my great aunt Tassie in her Sunday best. You notice the kids are all dressed, it looks like World War one clothing. So I imagine that that's what was available at the time. I had, like I said, I went to school in Winnipeg, and I also taught in Winnipeg to start off with. So in Seven Oaks School Division is where I graduated from. It's also the school division that I ended up teaching in the core area of, what did I apologize. And I started working with Indigenous students right then and there because I was the only Indigenous teacher in the school at the time. So, and in the 80s at that time, economic conditions were even far worse than they are now for a lot of people. And a lot of people come off the reserves into the city to get work. And the kids, particularly the girls, because I worked mainly with them, were very shy, not really wanting to talk or be involved in school because the big culture shock, as well as a difference in language, because a lot of them, English was not their first language. So I ended up doing that there. This work has started a couple of years ago now, almost, when I took a contract with an online school and Kataskanau Tribal Council in Red Earth Creek, so KTCA. It's a conglomerate basically of 5 Cree nations, Woodland Cree, that banded together to create their own education authority. And they have permission from the federal government, of course, because that's where they're under, but to take the program of studies through Alberta Education, which they also had permission with, to indigenize their program for their particular people. Because I don't know if people know this very much, but all the people across Canada on reserves and the settlements in Alberta all learn exactly the same thing as everybody else does in school across Canada, whichever province they're in. The curriculum is not tailored to them, and you would think they'd be learning, for instance, Métis people will be learning about Métis things, and First Nations people will be learning First Nations things, but it's not true in general. Those are kind of extra things that they end up learning. They learn the program of studies, whichever province that they're in. And so the KTCA was one of 3 school authorities on a reserve in Canada that got permission to do this. So I took their outreach program for grades 7 to 9, indigenized it for their particular cultures. I took it by the seasons as how they do theirs. So if you look on their website, you can see that. So it's fall, winter, spring, and then also included land-based learning and Cree language, which I've been learning this last year. And I worked closely with their specialists, and they were amazing to work with, and I learned so much from them. And then the elders took that work and put their teachings in for their nations, and they were very happy with what I did, and it really inspired me to continue this work. And so really my incentive is I have a passion for making sure that Indigenous content is in the curriculum in an authentic and a real way, and also to assist teachers, particularly non-Indigenous teachers, to be able to do this work, because I know it can be very daunting. It's something where you want to be respectful and you don't want to appropriate, and so I'm hoping that that's something that I can help with along the way. I don't have all the answers, but I do have lots of people I can talk to. I'm going to start by just showing you the AIR PDC resources. So if you haven't seen these ones, and I do have more that I'm going to show you later, but this is the professional development resources that are here for teachers in particular. And if you haven't seen Empowering the Spirit, and I'm often surprised that people don't know about this resource, because as I say, when I research, it's across Canada, all the pretty much post-secondary institutes for their education programs, particularly. Library services across Canada and other areas as well have this website actually referenced a lot of the time. Lots of stuff on here, and I can just scroll down. I mean, all these links basically bring you to the same thing. So lots of really great pedagogical stuff on here for teachers. But then there's also, I like to point to the Orange Shirt Day and Beyond one. Probably get tired of me hearing this or saying this, but rather looking at the teaching tools. If you go there, there's some really great posters and things like that. And they're done by division as well, which is what is really nice, that you can use for things like Orange Shirt Day or for sharing circles and that sort of thing. So those are some really good tools. It's always a great place to start if you're looking for materials. The next thing you can do is go to Find Resources by Focus. Now keep in mind, these are all developed by Alberta teachers for Alberta. So like I said, it's a really great place to start. You can search by focus. It basically propagates all of the resources that are available on here for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. And I know when I was in schools, Our Way is a Valid Way, Education is Our Buffalo, Weaving Ways, those sorts of things. They were always available in the school. But you can also sort it by audience, by level, or by type. So those are really great resources. I always suggest people start there because it's a really great place to begin if you're not sure where to go. Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty. I have a lot of stuff here, like a lot. So, and we'll get the Google Slides and a copy of the recording from ERLC within about 5 business days, roughly. If you do not, then you can email me. I will share my email address again at the end if you'd like. So not tons of time for questions in here, but if you do have something you want, feel free to pop, just use your audio, let me know, or pop it into the chat. As like I said, I keep an eye on it. And then stop me. There'll be time at the very end to share if there's anything else that if you have questions or concerns or anything that you've seen that I didn't show you that you think would be useful. So really what I'm looking at, specifically what I did was I went to the ARPDC Learn and Go, because I also find a lot of people don't know about those, and there's some really great resources for First Nations, Métis, Inuit there. There's some databases and lists that have a plethora of stuff. Like it could take a long time to go through all that, but I'm going to show you where they are. I'm going to look at ELA, social studies, math, science, and then basic First Nations, Métis, Inuit education. And that includes all the different areas of education. So like I said, I want to start with the ARPDC Learn and Go. I am also always surprised that people don't know about these. Because I know for years I've been able to access these. So this is really, like it's going to show you all. So these are all Learn and Goes. So I don't know if you know what these are. There was money put into this a long time ago. But if you look, you can search by, again, division or who you want to use, and in this case, I'm going to go to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. And as you can see right here, there's tons of things, right? And I'm going to go through them with you so you can see those. So the first one is Indigenous ways of knowing math. As you can see, they're all in a Google Drive too, which is nice because you can save them to your Google Drive. It's a bit slow. It's my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood. The house is built in the 1950s, so our internet cables are not the best. Didn't usually take this long though. What's going on? Yeah, there we go. Holy moly, that took a long time. So if you haven't seen Learn and Goes, this is what they look like. So you get one part is, it tells you what it is and what the parts of this are. So we're talking about Indigenous ways of knowing math here. So build strong relationships with these students, hand-on experiential learning, et cetera, all this stuff, right? Using stories, learn from the land. So some really great Indigenous ways of knowing concepts here, right? And then the second part is giving you resources, and there are things I'm going to show you anyways. Some of these things I've already had, but they show you some links to some resources that you can use that are specifically for that area. And then the third thing is another area of looking for resources that you can use to teach with, right? So, and they even, in this case, refer to the ARPDC Moodle. So there's a Moodle for that as well. So I hope that kind of gives you a general idea of what the Learn and Goes are. I'm not going to show you every single one of them, especially if they're going to take that long to show, but the storytelling one is a really good resource as well. All right, here we go. Took a little bit less time. So this storytelling one is really good, and it refers to, and I don't know if anybody has taken the University of Alberta e-course Indigenous Canada. I did that a few years ago under my TQS when I was at a private school, as fulfilling a lot of the history part of it. Given that I am Métis, especially, like I know some about First Nations people, especially because I have cousins that are Cree as well, because my great aunt Tassie, her husband was Cree. So my cousins are First Nations, but and then all people around us, right? But I don't know about every single place. I don't know about all the treaties, all that kind of stuff in detail. So I took the course because that was a really good way to understand a lot of that stuff. And then the second part here is that they've got some stories that you can look at. They've got TP teachings, which are always amazing. Those are really good. And then the last part, of course, is they've got some places you can look at some more stuff. They've referenced Wilfred Buck, which I'm going to talk to you about in science. Empowering the Spirit, again, that's sharing through story, which is it's an excellent resource. There's lots of really great videos there. And then Empowering the Spirit, infusing Indigenous texts into the classroom with Richard Van Camp. And I've seen that stuff too. It's really good. So it just gives you an idea of what's there for those, they're nice because they're, like a 2-pager with information on it. So, and I've made a list of them here. Again, I'm not going to go through in detail, but there's one about a land acknowledgement. And just so you know, I do a separate session on creating authentic land acknowledgements as well for your classroom and school. So there's that if you were interested in doing that. Two-eyed seeing. So don't have too much time to explain that here, but if you want to talk about it at the end, we can. Some artists, right? It's an Indigenous surrealist. We've got Joseph Sanchez, Norval Morisseau, amazing, another amazing artist. And then about the group of 7, and then land-based learning, which is obviously really important, which we're moving to calling it culture-based learning. For reasons, again, I can't get into here. I do a separate land-based learning session too. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, you could just let me know. So far, you're all pretty quiet. I'm going to show you this airbase or Airtable rather resource. Oh my goodness. It has so much stuff. There's no way I can get through all this, but once you see it, you're going to see like there's so many resources linked to this. So you've got your First Nations, Métis, Inuit curriculum database is what it's called. Yeah. So it goes all the way up to here. And it lists for each one, as you can see, the subject area. It tells you the type of resource. It tells you the culture, basically the basic culture, the grade levels, the categories, all that stuff. So it's got some really good information on here if you're looking. And then it goes all the way. Yeah, it just keeps going. So I just thought I'd point this out for you guys. I've used this at different times. If I'm looking for something in particular, if I'm not sure. It's got lists of books. It's insane. Anyways, it's got all the things, right? So it's got tons of stuff on here as you keep going down, and I could keep going forever. But the Airtable, this one is really amazing. You can use that. One for lesson plans, and this is from UT. But they have, and some of these do overlap with what I'm showing you because there's some that I use all the time. But there's lesson plans in here for different areas. As you can see, a lot of math, the land, and I've used whose land actually is one that I use for land acknowledgement too when I do that presentation. And then Indigenous math and science resources. And then they do, which is really nice, especially if you're working with the younger ones or if you're working with kids needing lower level readers, even if they're, junior high. Looking for some graphic novel type stuff. They've got a list here as well, which is really nice. And the one in particular is learning from elders. And then there are some Ontario resources. And yeah, it's not Alberta, but they do have some really good stuff in there still. And then this one is for a course, actually, but somebody created, and I think this is from the teachers that did this. Anyways, they've got links on here for everything again. And there will be some overlap, but I mean, this is BC as well. So there's a lot of Salish stuff on here, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I always say teach to where you are first and look at the people whose land that you're on. But, I mean, there's lots of Indigenous groups of people across Canada that have amazing, artwork and culture, food, all that stuff. So there's no reason we can't share that as well, right? Anyways, as you can see, again, this one keeps going. So tons of stuff on here and lots of links that I've used over and over again. It's kind of funny, Métis, they don't have too much yet, but that's because it's BC. There's not as many Métis people there. Yeah, anyways, like I said, it can keep going. It can keep going. That one. And this one is at Lakehead University. So one thing I find, like if you're looking, always good place to start often is the Bachelor of Education post-secondary sites on different universities and colleges across Canada, because they often have curated this already for their students to use as resources. So that's always a good place to start. But as you can see, they've got, again, right, and they even refer to Learn Alberta sample lesson plans that I've shown you. Sorry, that's my dog, decides to shake out as soon as he comes into the room. Yeah, so there's lots of stuff on there. And then Queen's University has a primary, junior, Indigenous education resources, which is nice too. So yeah, and again, too, like you see, there is some overlap because there's websites that are used over and over again. But this is really nice too. They've got these websites by subject, so you can look at like for art or culture. And what's really nice too is they've got a lot more resources for Inuit in this particular section. And I always have trouble, especially being in Alberta, finding some really good resources for the Inuit. And yeah, so I like that. It's really cool. All right, that's the database and lists of that one. And they keep coming because I have a lot of slides. Our Spirits Soar, which is also a good one. So this is in Saskatchewan. They have so many amazing lesson plans on here. And what's really neat is they've got this treaty education outcomes and indicators. Now, I think that for me as a teacher, if I was using this material because it is Saskatchewan, I would find it quite easy to take it and use it and apply it to the treaty area that I'm in Alberta. Because I think for what they've got here, particularly if you're in the north, right, because it's still Cree, what they're dealing with mainly here. If you happen to be in southern Alberta, then you have to do obviously some adjustments because you may be looking at some like Lakota people, or you could be looking at Blackfoot, right, or even Dene down here. So, but they also have these. They refer to some other lesson plans and things like that that they have. And again, like I said, they've got a kindergarten treaty education learning resource, which I find phenomenal. So I think even just using those concepts is a really great place to start, right? I mean, why rebuild that wheel if you've got kind of a basis for it? Like I said, here they've got treaties in the classroom for kindergarten grade 1, which is crazy. We don't have stuff like that here that I know of, unless somebody's created and just has not shared it. And these are all one-page documents, and I've used them before in different things. They're in a PDF. Lots of really great ones I love with the wheel and the circle, and all of them pretty much use paper plates for little kids to do this and talk about the history, pre-contact lifestyles. So that's a really cool one. And it, like the shape of Saskatchewan is pretty easy to do, right? But I mean, Alberta's not that complicated either. You could change it to that. Anyways, lots of stuff there. Lots of really good materials there. Site I've used a lot. And then this is from Saskatchewan again for professional learning for Indigenous perspectives. And there's 44 resources on here as well. And as you can see, they've got some really good links too. And again, like I said, it's from Saskatchewan, but it's not that different, especially in the north. You just really in the southern part of Alberta really have to really look at this in a little bit different way. And they do refer to the Métis lesson plans as well and refer to Slan Institute, and I'm going to show you those in more detail later. The NFB, and they've got so many amazing documentaries on there to use. Yeah, just so there's so much stuff on here. Anyways, again, look at that. This is an inventory in BC. But as you can see too, they've got a topic, right? So they go to the topic, for instance, worldviews and perspectives in the classroom, and then they have a document that they use. Again, you'll notice a lot of them reference NFESC. So if you have never used that website, I encourage you to, because they've got so many really good resources on there. So use a lot of that. And so again, it's tons and tons of, there's books and ebooks, stuff on here. And this is nice. They actually have lots of stuff from Métis, which can be hard to find sometimes. Yeah. Oh, sorry, back on. Look at that word they have in the chip. Anyways, you get the idea. There's tons of stuff on here. There's even links to pedagogy. There's some dissertations. So useful links for Indigenous education. This is Ontario Teachers Federation. They refer to things, and you know, if you've never heard of the Moosehead campaign, I mean, that's great for involving males in the school. Again, they've got Medicine Bill education they refer to, which is a good resource as well. Red Dress Project, Moccasin Project, the Witness Blanket, and those are Ontario. Well, the Red Dress Project itself goes across Canada, but this is their versions of it. But it's also good to look at for if you're wanting to create things at your own school or your own level to work up. Yeah, so there's that, tons of stuff there. And then the AFNs, so Assembly of First Nations, has, again, it's another list of just and links to things for free online educational resources. They're here too. Yeah, and those are across Canada because it's the AFN, so they just have curated whatever's across Canada. All right. I know. I could just do a session just on databases. So the ATA also, if you and I know sometimes people don't look at the ATA, I don't know why, but they've got some really good resources as well. And you'll notice too, they reference the Empowering the Spirit literacy video series too. They've got that on there. A section on Endangered Languages Project, which is really important. The government funded that a number of years ago, the federal government, to it was in conjunction with United Nations initiative on revitalizing Indigenous languages across the world. So not just in Canada, but that was something the government put money into. Yeah, so lots of stuff there. And then this is, oh, I did it again. I apologize. This is the other one. They're both Indigenous languages. Learning Bit is actually a company that I've done some work with as well privately. And they have some really good resources on their site too. So look, they reference here the Gord Downey and Cheney Wenjack Fund to talk about the secret path. Of course, that's definitely one I use for a little bit older kids, you know, that are able to handle that because it's a pretty heavy topic. And then they've got a lot of stuff here, Indigenous languages. They've got a guide, and then they've got a whole bunch of things that refer back to the secret path and some stuff for, obviously that's middle school. And then I think this is the last one for the databases. This is curriculum resources. You can see if I scroll down, start with kindergarten. And they go all the way up to grade 12. They've got different, so what happens is you click on a link, it's a digital resource and it brings up all the information about it, which is really nice because you can use this in your classroom if you want to use some of these resources and then show the kids where it comes from, what does it mean, right? It's really cool. They've got, you know, some of the pictograph symbols. Yeah, so there's that. Some really good pictures and stories in there. All right, so we're going to get into ELA particularly. So this is Indigenous Education Department in Saskatchewan again. And this has some novel studies and teacher guides. So I thought this would be useful. And I know there's a few on here that people have used that I've seen for like Indian horse and that sort of thing. There's also First Nations poetry unit outline, which is really nice because that can be a tough one to find. Yeah, I tried to go a little bit faster here because these are not as hard to get through as the databases, which go on forever. And this is Empowering the Spirit, but it's a link to a PDF for Indigenous literature kit. So I thought this is very useful for teachers when you're wanting to, you know, look at what books you'd like to choose, where do they fit in. It's really nice. And I know that obviously the curriculum has changed since this, but I think it's not that hard to figure out where they fit. Different books. And you probably will notice in some of these titles that some of the books that you'll see are very similar to what you may have already had in your classroom. But what's really nice, like I said, on here, so I'll go back up here, they give you a synopsis of each of the books, the title, obviously, the division, and then they tell you what the book is about, which is really nice. I think as a teacher to have that, to be able to get, you know, a little bit more information about the book. I'm going to show you Strong Nations at the very end too, and they are really good at doing that. They have a picture of the book and they have a synopsis of each of the books if you're looking for something. And Workland.UC has, again, also some really great links to Indigenous literature. You can just search by resources. So they have a whole list of like pages and pages and pages and pages, right? But let's say I even just look for, I'll go pre-K just for the heck of it. Go for a theme. Let's say Indigenous languages. We'll see what they come up with. Quite a few. There's lots. There's 2 pages. Stanley Cassider's one I know really well, and that's from BC, but it's a really nice book too. Yeah, so there's that. That is a really nice. It's a search engine when you're looking for different books. And then from C2C, this one. So it's about picture books, so the younger ones. But I often have people ask me because I think the younger ones, maybe it's a little bit more difficult sometimes to find books. I think it's getting better. There's a lot more books now. But this again too has a picture of the book. It has a little synopsis written by a teacher about what is the book about. May even have a picture of, inside the book. So yeah, that's there. I think that's an amazing resource. And then, like I said, Strong Nations is a really good one. Good Minds, Medicinal Publishing, or different ones you can use. Strong Nations is nice, I think, because like I said, it gives you this. If you look, here's the book, huge write-up about the book. The other thing is you can go to search by kids, teens, adults. There's educator resources as well on here. So just lots of stuff for teachers as well. You can see there's lots in French too. All right. And then there's secondary resources for ELA, and this is a BC one, but again, like I said, they've got lots of really great resources. Tons of stuff there for secondary. And then this is a really nice one too, because it's a little video. I'm not going to show. I use it actually when I present about Indigenous storytelling. It's just a little video explaining why oral history and tradition is really important for Indigenous storytelling. And this is at Simon Fraser University. They have a critical Indigenous literacy program, a resource here. And that's also something you can look at. And there's books in their curriculum collection, and they go by division again too, as you can see. They also have a list of graphic novels, which I think is really important, especially for those reluctant readers or the ones who are definitely more visual. And lots of lesson plans and teacher guides on here as well. Tons of them. Videos and DVDs, photos and images, all that stuff. So lots of really great material there. And then my favorite storyteller online is Elder Hazel. I love this lady. She is amazing. Not say enough nice things about her. It's at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum in Regina. I think that's what they call it. But she's got stories on here about how the turtle got its shell, all that stuff. There's also a series on the 7 grandfather teachings. They've even got a boggle board exercises to go with the hidden words from her stories. But she's just so sweet and so gentle when she tells stories with the kids. So I think it's a really great example too. Like I always say this for the older kids as an example of, showing them how an adult even can be emotive and how our elders are so expressive when they do things with the kids. And social studies, I brought up a bunch of resources that I found that I didn't know if you guys would have. And so this is for the Métis, because I know often it's hard to find material on the Métis, but it talks about, the only thing I don't like about this is the first thing it says is we're the descendants of the voyageurs and First Nations women, because my family is mostly Scottish and they were not voyageurs. They were interpreters and they were office workers for the Hudson Bay Company in general. And a lot of them actually that were Scottish mapped out. So they were cartographers. They mapped out the northern part of Canada, a lot of them. So a lot of our maps that we have now today in Canada are from them. But often termed that way. But it's just a nice little presentation on the Métis there, other than that first little annoyance for me. And then the Canadian Encyclopedia, I did a search you're on Indigenous, there's a whole lot of really good articles on here. And I've used this in curriculum for kids. So it is a really good website and it's updated all the time. And it's actually it's really accurate, I would say. Like they're very good at changing any material that may be incorrect. Also, Historica Canada is another good one. And this is nice because it has an Indigenous perspectives education guide. There's also a teacher's kit for art and stories, key moments in Indigenous history timeline, which is amazing. It's a really good timeline. Treaties in Canada, talking about the War of 1812 and referring to Indigenous people's involvement in that in the South, or well, yeah, Southern Ontario and into the Eastern provinces. Yeah, so there's lots of that stuff there. So it's always a good one to use. And then there's a timeline of Alberta's Indigenous history, the legacy of teachers of Alberta. Stepping stones. So if you haven't seen this one, it's from Walking Together, but it really just gives you that timeline, which is really nice, of that pre-contact, post-contact in Alberta, particularly. All right, so that's a bit more here. I included this website, and it's not specifically only Indigenous, but the Speak Truth to Power, I think, is a really great one for high school if you haven't seen it, because there are Indigenous speakers on here as well. Particularly, they've got Mary Simon on here, which is really nice, about cultural identity and education. And they also have the one Equitable Education for All. But and I think Tamia Nagy's about human trafficking, talking about that. So there's a number of Indigenous people on here, as well as Leone Couture, I believe she's as well, from Quebec. And then the history of First Nations people in Canada, which is Alberta School Councils. It's a conversation guide. It's a nice little document I found that I think is really useful. And this is really important too for empowering the spirits when I was talking about treaty work, right? So we look at the Saskatchewan stuff that they had. This is specifically, if you haven't seen this one, looking at the number of treaties across Canada, specifically in Alberta, giving that background information, some really good visuals. Of course, the coin, right? So we've got the coin for treaties, some really good pictures there, flags of the different nations, right? Anyway, so there's that, myths and facts about treaties. And then this one. And this is for Quebec and Ontario. Like I said, I think it's important as well that we have stuff from across Canada. Always go local, but if you're looking for anything, to draw anything, especially when we're getting to the high school courses, we're looking at more, across the board and what we're going to look at. The tons of NFB, tons of stuff on NFB. Math. So now I've got math. There's tons of math stuff too. So British Columbia, like I said, has so many amazing resources. So UBC has this on their website. So lots of stuff about applying math. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Using Salish baskets, kayak design for math, Navajo math circles, and the Navajo are also Dene. So you can relate that. They're not the same group of people anymore because they left a long time ago, but you can relate that back to them, and their language does derive itself from the Dene of the North. So there's that. You can talk about the Haida Gwaii. There's some math adventures there. There's links to some games and things like that. Math Catcher, which is that Simon Fraser as well, that I referred back to before. A lot of those BC resources that they have. Sorry, my allergies seem to be acting up. I've used this a lot in math presentations. This website is amazing. I'll just click on one for you so you can see. So Stick Dice. It gives you information about the people that it comes from. It gives you all of the directions. What's really nice on all of these is that it gives you the original items that would have been used to make these. And then it tells you something that you could use to create these yourself, like tongue depressors or something like that. But at least you can explain to the children what the original materials were that something was made out of. And then this is the BC one, but for elementary. And I've used this again too in my presentation I do in beading and weaving. This is beading activities and lesson plans on here as well. Weaving. And those are all good for math, like amazing for math, right? Learning how to count in an Indigenous language. And then some other activities and some extra books that you can use to support your math programs. And this is the Math Catcher one that they referred to earlier. It's a really amazing site. The two guys behind this. So if you haven't seen Small Number is, there's a bunch of videos about Small Number and his adventures in his community in learning math. And there's a lot more, I think, that they're developing, because you see it says coming soon. They're working on those as well. But there's that. And they, at that university, they actually do face-to-face workshops with teachers and children there too, based on some of that work. I'm not going to show you this entire video, but or like this in community, but this is Indigenous Knowledge and Mathematics Community of Ontario. If you don't know about them, there's a few videos on here. I wish they had more. It looks like they kind of gave up on the project because it was 5 years ago. They must have just got funding to do it. But there's some good videos in here about how you infuse math. You know, like for instance, the one I love is exploring math through drumming. I drum and I've been a music teacher, and then exploring math on the land and things like that. It gives you some really good ideas. The construction of a lodge, like a sweat lodge, like how would you use that to do a math lesson? And then we've got traditional math in the Ontario classroom. And this is, it's 2 hour, well, not, it's an hour long, but this gentleman here, what's his name again? Brian Belfield. Yeah, Brian Belfield. He's amazing. I got some many great ideas from him about traditional land-based learning and math when I watched his session. So that's on YouTube if you want to incorporate some of that. And then this refers back to that one I was showing you, where they've got some of those videos, but it also gives you some information about them, and they do have some things on there. As you can see, they pretty much quit. Since like 2022 is the last time they published anything, but they've got a guidebook on there, and they've got a few other math resources too that go along with it. Again, some more logic games. This is from Burnaby. And it goes through all of the different grade levels. We see this has got grade 11, it's got grade 8, but they've got stuff through all of the different grade levels, and they relate it back to all kinds of Indigenous ways of knowing in terms of, you know, beading and making baskets, and like you name it, it's got all the things on here. So I'm trying to get through this, but it relates to different areas, and they have books that they refer to that you can get about game pieces, like pictures of what they used to look like. They've got a unit plan on here, possible assessment strategies, all that kind of stuff. And they've got some Blackline Masters too. So that's really cool on here. If that's something you want to use in terms of like patterning and geometry. And then there's that Math First Pupils, which is a really great resource. And it's a downloadable PDF. So it's not like you have to order the book and pay for it if you want to just pull something out of there and change it. And again, too, they refer back to a whole bunch of links on here too, with Blackline Masters and keys and stuff like that. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because they're just separate documents, and I want to get to the last section, but I want to show you at least one of these. So this is a document I came across, and it's Indigenous Teachings and Experiential Mathematics for Catholic Educators, which is interesting. So I know we have a number of Catholic schools here in our province, so this might be something that some of you are interested in. But they go through a number of things. So as you can see, they want to incorporate the Indigenous worldview and talking about Catholic teachings, and then talking about the Eurocentric, and then the research and what it reveals. And then they've got a whole bunch of listing of sample learning experiences, and they also include some of the Catholic teachings as well in the back of the book too. So if that's something that interests you. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to go on here. So this is a science. I love this particular resource. It just the concept of it, I just love it. So Child Becomes Strong, Journeying Through Each Stage of the Life Cycle, which to me is an amazing title. It is getting a bit old now, but it's still amazing. And so if you look at it, it's really for looking again like at the life cycles of a person, right? So that biology, but it's from an Indigenous perspective. So I think that's just really cool. and using the medicine wheel and the 4 directions. And so it gives you a little bit of that pedagogical information. It's got some amazingly beautiful pictures in here too. Talk about the 7 stages of life and all that stuff. This is secondary science teacher's resource for the FNESC. Do that. I'm gonna run out of time, so I'm gonna get some. Wilfred Buck. I love his stuff. If you don't know about him, he's Cree from Manitoba, but he looks at he's amazing. He's studied all across Canada, Indigenous astronomy. He travels all over the province, across Canada, as a matter of fact, to do planetarium presentations. He has one that he uses outside in the summer. You can book him even, but here's some of his actual books that he has created, which is really neat, looking at the sky from, particularly for him because he's Cree, looking at the constellations that are Cree. But he also looks at them from other perspectives too, from across Canada and other Indigenous groups. That's gonna, yeah, the night sky stories, the star stories as well. And he tells those when he does these presentations. If you could even get him out to your school at some point. I know he's booked like a year in advance, but definitely worth getting him out. Just an aside to show you, if you're like working in food studies and looking in science, there's a separate food guide for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and I don't know if everybody understands that or knows that. There is a downloadable PDF form, of course, to be able to do that. But there is a separate one, right? So you can download that as well in a PDF. So you can look at that. And what I've done before, I used it for Calm when I was teaching in grade 11, and compared the regular food guide to that and talked to the kids about why there's a difference. And I did have Indigenous kids in my classroom as well, so we talked about that a little bit. And there's traditional foods on there as well, which is really nice. I'm not going to show you tons more on the science because I do want to have a couple minutes to go through some of the FNMI stuff. But I did want to point out CMAST also has some biology 20 Aboriginal resources too. They have some 7, 9, 10 science 20 and 30 as well in here. And then they have some elementary resources that you can look at. There's those. Those apparently are in Word. You can download them. I'm going to go onto here. Yeah. So I want to just point out a few of these before I close up. There's a teaching resource center here, and this is amazing. This website, if you've never used it, I've used it in different presentations. The National Center for Collaboration in Indigenous Education is amazing. Really focused on land-based learning, but different things that you can use with it. So you can search on all these different areas. You can see Indigenous languages, Indigenous ways of knowing and being on the land, art, music, all of the stuff you can see in front of you. You can do advanced searches. And an advanced search, for instance, I just want to show you the search engine because it's crazy and detailed, but you can go all the different levels. You can go to all different age groups or subjects. They've got all the things on here. And then of course you can go by province or territory, and then you've got search terms and all this stuff too. So there's so much, right? And then if you just click on one of their lesson plans, it's got so much information in it. It gives you not only the description, but you can download the lesson plan and the resources if you'd like. You can click on these and it tells you in even more detail what it's related to, language and culture, whatever it may be. And then they even have acknowledgement protocols on here if you need. They've got learning outcomes for most of them. Not everything has a teacher's guide, but they often have videos and things that you can look at as well. One more minute. I'll go to the Learn Alberta one because that is for here. We'll look at that one. You guys can, I know it's a lot to go through, but I just wanted everybody to see that there's tons of stuff on here that we can look at. Again, this is the walking together, and that's an Alberta resource. So we've got the cycles of life in there. And then the Learning Circle is also a really good one from the Government of Canada, surprisingly, has some good stuff on here. I'm not thrilled with, they've got some coloring pages and stuff like that, but it was created by the main government, right? So I expect them to necessarily be education experts, but they do have lots of really good information on here and things that can be modified for lesson plans. And it's downloadable as a PDF as well. And there's also MP3s for audio stuff that's available on here if it's needed. So, but I'm going to finish there. I'm going to stop share here, bring it out here, and then I'm going to stop recording. If I can. Sorry, forward it's moved. Stop.